I was 3 weeks away from getting married when I finally heard out loud what I had been too stubborn to see for the past 2 years. Her name was Melanie, 31 years old, worked in HR at a mid-sized logistics company downtown Sacramento. The kind of woman who knew exactly what to say in a room full of people, and that was the problem. She was good at managing impressions. Too good. We met at a mutual friend's birthday. She was sharp, funny, confident. On the third date, she already had opinions about where I should get my hair cut. I thought that was cute. I was wrong. Her sister, Evelyn, was 2 years younger and cut from the same cloth. The two of them together were like a machine. One would start a sentence, and the other would finish it. Mostly about other people. Mostly not kind. They had that habit of laughing at things that weren't funny to anyone outside their little circle, and then acting surprised when someone took offense. I sat through more dinners than I can count watching the two of them pick apart whoever wasn't at the table. Neighbors, coworkers, cousins, exes. Nobody was off limits. Melanie had a history I only learned in pieces. Before me, there was a guy named Shane who she dated for almost 4 years. That ended when he got a job offer in another state, and she gave him an ultimatum. He took the job. Before Shane, there was someone else she never talked about by name. Just referred to as a mistake I don't need to revisit. She was 30 when we started dating, and I could feel, even early on, that there was a pressure underneath everything she did. Not desperation, exactly. More like urgency. Like she was working against a clock only she could hear. Her family didn't make it easier. Her mother made comments at holidays that were wrapped in smiles, but landed like elbows. Evelyn once told me, completely seriously, that Melanie had always been the one most likely to settle. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. Melanie pretended not to hear. There was a dinner at her aunt's house, maybe 8 months into us dating, where Melanie made a crack about a cousin's new boyfriend. Something about his clothes, the way he talked. Nothing worth repeating. The cousin heard it. The whole table went quiet. Melanie laughed it off, and I sat there with a fork in my hand, not knowing where to look. She apologized later in the car, but the apology was mostly about how the cousin needed to develop thicker skin. I let it go. I kept letting things go. As for us, the physical side of things, I noticed early that she was never fully present. Not absent, exactly, but performing. Like she was going through motions she had decided were appropriate rather than ones she actually wanted. There were nights I'd reach for her, and she'd make a joke to sidestep it. And I told myself that's just how some people are. They would get better once we settled into each other. It didn't get better. I just stopped noticing as much. I work as an electrician. Union job, steady hours, decent pay. Nothing flashy, but I own my truck. I cover my rent. I don't owe anyone anything. I'm the kind of person who shows up on time and keeps his word and expects the same back. That sounds basic because it is. And I think that's exactly why I missed what was right in front of me for so long. I kept expecting the same thing back and convincing myself I was getting it. 3 weeks before the wedding, Evelyn came over on a Friday evening. I had picked up some drinks on the way home from a job in Elk Grove, stopped at a Chevron, grabbed a six-pack and a bottle of wine I knew Melanie liked. The two of them were in the living room when I got back, already deep in conversation. I set everything down in the kitchen, opened 2 bottles, and headed back down the hallway. That's when I stopped. I don't know why I stopped. Some instinct. Maybe I heard my name. Maybe I heard the tone before I heard the words. Either way, I stood in that hallway and I listened. Evelyn asked something I didn't fully catch. The tail end of a question. Something about the wedding, about us. And Melanie laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A comfortable one. The kind you let out when you're completely at ease with whoever you're talking to. I mean, I have to get a little drunk first, she said. He's so unimpressive. Evelyn laughed back. They moved on to something else. I stood in that hallway for about 4 seconds. Then I walked back into the living room, handed them the drinks, sat down on the couch, and spent the next 90 minutes talking about nothing. I smiled when it was appropriate. I refilled her glass once. I walked Evelyn to the door when she left and told her to drive safe. Then I sat down at the kitchen table, alone, and started thinking clearly for the first time in 2 years. I sat at that kitchen table until past midnight. Not spiraling, not replaying the same moment over and over. Just thinking through everything with a kind of cold steadiness that honestly surprised me. The question wasn't whether I heard correctly. I heard exactly what she said. The question I kept coming back to was simpler and harder at the same time. Why was she doing this at all? She had options. She was educated, employed, presentable. She could have walked away from us 6 months in if she wasn't happy. A year in, 18 months in, there were off-ramps everywhere. She didn't take any of them. She kept going, kept planning, kept picking out table centerpieces and debating between two different photographers and asking me what I thought about venues in Roseville versus Sacramento proper. So if I was that unimpressive to her, why marry me? The answer came together slowly, but it came together clearly. Melanie was 31. Her last serious relationship ended because she gave an ultimatum and lost. The one before that she never talked about. Her mother made holiday comments about timelines. Her cousin was already on her second kid. Evelyn, for all their closeness, had been engaged for 2 years and was already in a house with her guy. I wasn't a choice. I was a solution. Stable income, no drama. Showed up when I said I would, didn't embarrass her. On paper, I was exactly what you bring home when you've decided it's time to stop looking for what you actually want and start settling for what works. She didn't love me the way you love someone you chose. She loved me the way you appreciate a reliable appliance. And I had handed her every reason to think that was fine. Every time I let a comment slide. Every time I laughed off an awkward moment at dinner. Every time I noticed something fell off between us and convinced myself I was overthinking it. There was a moment about 4 months into the engagement. We were at a barbecue at her coworker Margaret's place. Melanie had a few drinks and started telling a story about a guy Margaret used to date. Going into detail. The kind of detail you only share if you want people to cringe. Margaret's husband was standing 10 feet away. He heard enough of it to go quiet. The whole conversation stalled. Margaret pulled Melanie aside, and whatever was said between them, Melanie came back to where I was standing with that tight smile she used when she was covering something. On the drive home, I told her that was out of line. She told me I was being sensitive. Then she said I clearly didn't understand how women talk to each other, which was her way of ending a conversation she didn't want to have. I dropped it. I always dropped it. That was the pattern. She'd push past the line. I'd say something. She'd reframe it as my problem, and I'd move on. Over 2 years, that happened enough times that I stopped flagging things at all. I just absorbed them and filed them away somewhere where I wasn't actively looking. The intimacy thing I had mostly rationalized. She was particular about timing, about mood, about conditions that always seemed slightly off. There was a stretch of about 6 weeks, once where she found a reason every single time. Tired. Headache. Early morning tomorrow. I wasn't pressuring her. I wasn't even asking most of those times. But the distance was there, and I felt it. I brought it up once, carefully, and she told me I was making her feel like an object. That shut the conversation down fast. I apologized. She accepted it. Nothing changed. Now, sitting at that table at midnight, the picture was fully assembled. She needed the wedding. Not me, specifically. The wedding. The status of it. The photos, the dress, the announcement. The thing she could show her mother and her cousins and everyone in her orbit as proof that her timeline was intact. I was the man attached to that plan. Convenient, stable, and apparently easy enough to manage that she felt comfortable saying exactly what she thought to her sister in her own living room with me 30 feet away. I went to bed around 1 o'clock in the morning. She was already asleep. I lay there for a while looking at the ceiling, then I closed my eyes. By the time my alarm went off at 6 o'clock, I already knew what I was going to do. Every single step of it. She was still asleep when I made coffee at 6:15. I drank it standing at the kitchen counter looking out the window at the yard. Then I sat down with my laptop and got to work. The venue was first. We had booked a place in Midtown, a restored event space that held about 120 people. Deposit paid, contract signed, balance due 30 days before the date. I pulled up the contract, found a cancellation clause, and called the number listed. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. I gave my name, gave the booking reference, and told them I needed to cancel. The woman on the other end asked if I wanted to reschedule. I said no. She walked me through the process, told me the deposit was non-refundable per the terms, and I told her that was fine. She sent a confirmation email before we hung up. 6:42 in the morning. The photographer was next. A guy named Irving who had shot 3 weddings in Melanie's extended circle and came highly recommended by Evelyn, naturally. We had paid a booking fee and were scheduled for a final walkthrough the following week. I sent him a message through the booking platform. Direct. No elaboration. Canceling the contract and referencing the clause that covered full cancellations outside 30 days. He responded within 20 minutes asking if everything was okay. I didn't reply. The honeymoon had been my department entirely. 10 days, flights, hotel, 2 excursions already pre-booked. I had put it on my card and Melanie had never asked what it cost, which told me something I had also filed away and not looked at closely enough. I called the travel insurance line first. I had added coverage when I booked, almost on instinct, and started a claim. Then I contacted the hotel directly and the airline. The hotel was straightforward. The airline took longer and involved being transferred twice, but by 8:15 it was done. Cancellation confirmations in my inbox. Claim number from the insurance company. Refund timeline noted. Total time, just under 2 hours. She slept through all of it. I heard the bedroom door open around 8:40. She came out in a t-shirt, hair still from the night before, heading for the coffee maker. She said, "Good morning," without looking at me directly, which was normal for her before her first cup. I said good morning back. She sat down across from me with her mug and scrolled through her phone. I closed the laptop and watched her for a moment. She looked completely unbothered, comfortable, like it was any other Saturday morning in any other week of any ordinary year. I had already decided I wasn't going to say anything yet. Not because I was afraid of the conversation, but because I wanted her to find out the way she deserved to find out. Through her inbox, through the vendor she had spent months coordinating with. I wanted the news to arrive the same way she had treated me. Casually, without warning, like it was nothing particularly significant. She made eggs around 9 o'clock, asked if I wanted some. I said sure. We ate at the same table where I had sat alone at midnight the night before, working through everything she had never bothered to hide carefully enough. She talked about something she had seen on Netflix. I responded where it made sense. She mentioned that Evelyn had texted her that morning and seemed happy about something. Good for her, I said. She looked at me for half a second, then went back to her eggs. The first email hit her phone at 9:47. I know the exact time because I was watching her face when it happened. She was mid-sentence about something. I don't remember what, and then she stopped, looked at her screen. Her expression didn't change right away. She read it once, then read it again. "This is from the venue," she said. "Yeah." She looked up. "It says the booking was canceled this morning." "That's right." She put the phone down on the table slowly, the way people do when they're trying to stay controlled. "What does that mean?" "It means I canceled it." The second email came in while she was still staring at me. She didn't look at it. She kept her eyes on my face, and for the first time in 2 years, I saw her completely at a loss for what to say next. No reframe ready, no angle prepared, just a woman sitting across a kitchen table who had just understood that the plan she had been executing for 2 years had come apart overnight, and the person she thought would never do anything about it was the one who had done it. "Why?" she said. Not a question, more like a word she needed to put somewhere. I leaned back in my chair. "You want to have that conversation right now?" She didn't answer. Her phone buzzed again on the table between us, Irving probably, and she didn't pick it up. I said, "You already know why." She started with denial. That was the first move, telling me I must have misheard, that I was taking something out of context, that Evelyn and her had a way of talking to each other that didn't mean what it sounded like from the outside. She said it with the same measured tone she used in meetings at work. Composed, reasonable, like she was managing a misunderstanding with a colleague rather than sitting across from the man she had spoken so poorly of 12 hours earlier. I let her finish, then I repeated her words back to her exactly. Not a paraphrase, the sentence word for word with the laugh that followed it. She went quiet. "That's not," she started. "Melanie." I kept my voice level. I was standing in that hallway. "I heard you. We're not going to spend the next hour debating what you meant." She shifted to the next move, which was tears. Not the kind that come from being genuinely wrecked, the kind that arrive on schedule when the first approach doesn't land. Her eyes went glassy, and she told me she was sorry, that she didn't mean it, that she had been venting to Evelyn the way sisters vent, and it came out wrong, and she would never actually think of me that way. I watched her say all of it, and I thought about every dinner where she had done the same thing to someone else. The way she could pivot into sincerity the moment a situation required it. She was skilled at it. I had mistaken that skill for depth for 2 years. "Here's what I keep coming back to," I said. "You didn't say that because you were having a bad day. You said it because that's what you think. And the part that actually matters to me is that you were going to marry me anyway." She didn't have an answer for that. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and looked at the table. "So what was the plan exactly?" I asked. "We get married, we take the trip, we come back and set up a life together. And the whole time you're gritting your teeth through the parts of it you can't stand? That was the arrangement you signed up for." "It's not like that," she said. "Then tell me what it's like. Because from where I'm sitting, you needed a husband, and I was available and checked enough boxes. And that might have worked out fine for you if you'd been a little more careful about what you say and where you say it." That landed. She looked up at me, and for a moment something honest crossed her face. Not remorse, but recognition. She knew exactly what I was describing, and she knew I was right. And that was the thing she couldn't manage her way around. "I do love you," she said. "I'm sure you love the version of me that was never going to do anything about this," I said. That version was very convenient. She pushed back from the table and stood up. Started moving around the kitchen the way people do when they need to be in motion, straightening things that didn't need straightening, opening the refrigerator and closing it again. She asked what she was supposed to tell people. Her family, her mother, the guests who had already booked travel. That's your problem, I said. You're good at managing what things look like. You'll figure it out. You're being cruel, she said. I almost laughed. Melanie, I handed you drinks last night and sat on that couch for an hour and a half like everything was fine. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference, and you'd know it if you tried it at some point. She grabbed her phone off the table and walked to the bedroom. The door didn't slam. She closed it with control, which was somehow worse. I sat there for a few minutes, finished the last of my coffee, and then got up and rinsed the mug in the sink. 20 minutes later, she came back out, dressed, bag over her shoulder. She said she was going to Evelyn's. I nodded. She stood in the doorway for a moment like she was waiting for me to say something that would change the trajectory of the morning. I didn't have anything to add. She left. I heard her car back out of the driveway. I picked up my phone and called my buddy Thomas. We've been friends since high school, worked the same union hall for a stretch before he moved to a different contractor. I told him I needed to talk, asked if he was around. He said come over. I grabbed my keys and went. Thomas lived 20 minutes away in a house he rented with his girlfriend. I sat at his kitchen table and told him the whole thing from the beginning. He listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I've always respected about him. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "So you already canceled everything?" "Everything," I said. He nodded slowly. Good. That was the whole conversation I needed. By Sunday evening, my phone had logged 14 missed calls. 4 from Melanie, 3 from Evelyn, 2 from a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Melanie's mother, and the rest from contacts I hadn't spoken to in months who had apparently been briefed on the situation and felt compelled to weigh in. I answered none of them. Melanie's mother left a voicemail. I played it once, standing in Thomas's driveway, before driving home. She said she was sure there had been a misunderstanding and that she hoped we could sit down together as adults and work through whatever had happened. Her tone was controlled, but underneath it was something else. The specific alarm of a woman who had watched her daughter's plan unravel and understood exactly what that meant for the story the family had been telling itself. I deleted the voicemail and drove home. Melanie was there when I got back. She had clearly spent time at Evelyn's working through how to approach me, because the version of her that was waiting in the living room was different from the one who had left that morning. Calmer, more deliberate. She asked if we could talk without it becoming an argument. I sat down and told her to go ahead. She had prepared something. I could tell because she moved through it in a sequence, acknowledging that what I heard was hurtful, explaining that she had been feeling pressure about the wedding and had vented carelessly, telling me that her feelings for me were genuine even if the way she had expressed herself was indefensible. She used that word, indefensible. Evelyn had probably coached her on that one. When she finished, I asked her one question. How many times have you said something like that to Evelyn about me? She didn't answer fast enough. That's what I thought, I said. This wasn't a one-time thing that came out wrong under pressure. This is how you talk about me when I'm not in the room. I just happened to be close enough to hear it this time. She tried to interrupt, and I kept going. And here's the part one want you to actually think about. You were 3 weeks from marrying me. Not 3 months into dating. Not early on when people are still figuring things out. 3 weeks out. Deposits paid, guests confirmed, your dress altered, and you still think of me that way. So either you were going to spend the rest of your life tolerating me, or at some point down the road you would have made sure I found out. Just not on your terms. She told me I was making her sound calculating. I told her the word I'd use was practical. She had been practical about the whole thing from the start, and I had been too comfortable to notice. That ended the conversation. She went quiet and stayed that way, and I went to the bedroom and started sorting out what in the apartment was mine and what was hers. We weren't living together officially. She had her own place across town, a rental she'd kept since before we got engaged. Most of her things at my place were accumulated over time. The slow drift of a relationship that had been heading toward a merge that was now not happening. The calls kept coming over the next 2 days. Evelyn sent a text Monday morning saying she needed to explain herself and that what Melanie said wasn't meant the way it sounded. I read it and put my phone face down on my workbench. I was on a job with Thomas that week, a commercial retrofit, full crew, long days. It was exactly the kind of work that keeps your hands busy and your head from going in circles, and I was grateful for it. The situation inside Melanie's family, I found out later through Thomas, had already been complicated before I came along. There had been an incident about a year before Melanie and I got together. Something at a family gathering at her aunt's house, where Melanie had gotten into it with her cousin Catherine over something that started as a comment and escalated into a full argument in front of everyone. Catherine had stopped speaking to Melanie's mother over it, claiming she had taken Melanie's side on something she had no business defending. The rift had never fully closed. Two branches of the family had quietly stopped appearing at the same events. When news spread that the wedding was off, Catherine apparently called Melanie's mother directly. I don't know what was said. What I do know is that within 48 hours of my conversation with Melanie, the family had fractured further along that same existing line, with some people landing on the side of he must have done something, and others landing somewhere closer to the truth. Wednesday afternoon, Evelyn showed up at my job site. I saw her pull into the parking area from across the building. She drove a white SUV that was hard to miss. She got out and stood there like she was deciding whether to come closer. I walked over to her before she could make that choice on her own terms. "I'm not here to cause problems," she said. "Then this is going to be a short conversation," I said. She told me she felt responsible and that she should have said something in the moment to shut it down instead of laughing. I looked at her for a second. "Evelyn, you didn't laugh because you were caught off guard. You laughed because you agreed with her. So let's skip the part where you make yourself the person who almost did the right thing." She didn't have a response to that. She stood there for a moment longer. Then she nodded once, got back in the SUV, and left. I went back to work. Melanie sent one final message that evening. Long. I could tell she had written and rewritten it several times. She said she understood that trust was broken and that she wasn't asking me to pretend otherwise. She said she genuinely believed we had something worth saving and that she was willing to do whatever it took. She asked me to at least consider talking to someone together before making a permanent decision. I read it twice. Then I typed back 4 words. "The decision is made." I put the phone down and went to check on the batch of amber ale I'd had fermenting in the garage for the past 2 weeks. It was ready. I poured a small sample into a glass, held it up to the light, and decided it had turned out well. Some things, when you give them the right conditions and don't interfere, come out exactly right. The date that was supposed to be my wedding day came and went on a Saturday in October. I spent the morning on the roof of a house in Elk Grove fixing a panel that a previous contractor had wired badly enough to be a fire hazard. By noon I was done. I stopped at a Taco Bell on the way back, ate in the truck with the windows down, and drove home. No ceremony, no guests, no photographer named Irving circling the room looking for candid moments. Just a Saturday that turned out to be a Saturday. The ring had gone back to the jeweler 6 days after the cancellations. I had bought it outright, no financing, no payment plan, so the return was clean. Store credit, I hadn't decided what to do with yet. I wasn't in a hurry. Melanie had collected the last of her things from my place the week before. I had left for work early that morning and told her the door would be unlocked. When I came home that evening, the spare key was on the kitchen counter and the shelf in the bathroom where she kept things was empty. That was it. No note, no final text. Whatever she had left to say, she had apparently decided to keep. I found out through Thomas that she had told people in her circle a version of events where I had ended things without explanation, citing cold feet. That framing conveniently left out the hallway, the drinks, and the sentence that started all of it. I wasn't surprised. She was always better at managing the narrative than sitting inside the truth of a situation. What she hadn't accounted for was that I had told my version to exactly the right people. Not broadly, not loudly, but to the ones who mattered. Thomas knew. A couple of guys from my crew knew, and Margaret, the coworker from a barbecue incident, knew because she and I had crossed paths at a hardware store the week after everything came out, and she had asked me directly what happened. I told her. She listened with the expression of someone who was not entirely shocked. "She did something similar to me once," Margaret said. "I should have warned you." "Wouldn't have mattered," I said. "I wouldn't have believed it." That's the honest answer. I had been invested enough that someone else's warning would have bounced off. I needed to hear it in her own voice with her own laugh behind it to let it land. The family situation sorted itself out the way those things do, slowly and incompletely. Catherine, the cousin, had apparently reached out to Melanie's mother after the wedding fell apart. In whatever conversation, they had only deepened the existing divide. The aunt stopped inviting both sides to the same gatherings. Melanie's mother, from what I understood, blamed Evelyn for encouraging Melanie's worst habits for years without ever pushing back. That assessment was accurate, but about a decade late. Evelyn, for her part, went quiet. No more texts. No more appearances at job sites. Whether she felt genuine regret or simply calculated that there was nothing left to gain by pursuing it, I couldn't say. Probably both. As for Melanie, she was still at the same job, still in the same rental across town, still moving through Sacramento the same way she always had. I saw her once, about 6 weeks after everything, at a Walgreens off Howe Avenue. She was in the next aisle. We both clocked each other at the same moment. She looked away first. I finished reading the label on whatever I was holding, put it back on the shelf, and left through the other end of the aisle. That was the last time I saw her. The thing about a plan built on managing other people's perceptions is that it requires everyone to keep cooperating. The moment one person stops performing, stops ignoring, stops absorbing what they're handed and calling it enough, the whole structure has nothing left to hold it up. I had been cooperating for 2 years without knowing that's what I was doing. The night I stood in that hallway and heard her laugh, I stopped. Everything that followed was just consequence. My life after that looked almost identical to my life before. Same job, same house, same truck with 140,000 miles on it that I kept meaning to trade in and never did. The difference was in what wasn't there anymore. The low-grade tension of a relationship that asked me to be slightly less than I was. The habit of filing things away and not examining them. The quiet accommodation of someone who had decided I was useful without deciding I was worth it. Gone. All of it. Without much fanfare and without a single moment of regret. The amber ale, by the way, turned out to be one of the better batches I'd made. I brought a 6-pack to Thomas's place that weekend, and we drank them on his porch while he complained about his truck, and I said nothing useful about it, because I know nothing about trucks, which he already knew, and it didn't matter. Some Saturday afternoons are exactly what they're supposed to be. Nothing more, nothing less. Just yours. 3 weeks before the wedding. Deposits paid, guests confirmed, dress altered, and she still talked about him like that. To her own sister. In his own house. I mean, some people are just really committed to the plan, not the person. If you enjoyed our video, don't forget to leave a like. It's very important for the channel. A lot of people watch until the end and then move on to another video, forgetting to leave a like, and that really matters to us. Also, leave a comment telling us what you thought. What's your opinion about it? Or simply comment where you're watching this video from. Let's keep the comments active and engaged. Thank you for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next video.